Hello, everyone. This is Zishan on Air Unedited, and I welcome you all. And today we will dive right into today's very important topics because we are going through a very interesting and challenging times as we think about humanity, as we think about various issues. And the first and foremost, let's get to the key issues today. So I would like to point out that right now, especially when it comes to the international arena and what's happening in the Middle East, which is mind boggling. And we do not have the courage. And when I say we, meaning our elected officials, especially those who are in Washington, D.C., because mass graves, they have been found close to Al Nasser Hospital, where Al Nasser Hospital used to be 283 bodies. And who knows, it could be more mass graves. And when basically it was asked by Jack Sullivan and President Biden, uh, basically they have been calling for investigations, even Jack Sullivan, but these investigations have been called since 2014, and no one can go to the crime scene right now in Gaza. No international observers, no journalists are allowed. So we do not even comprehend and even understand that what kind of atrocities and human suffering is still going on. But with regards to the crime scene, if they do not allow anyone, then we know that there is probably no crime scene left. And that is where, in Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program, that's what the Dr. Agnes Calamard, she is the Amnesty International Secretary General, and that's what she said. And she also said that uh, the Blinken to Biden, and I quote her and I paraphrase as well, that their hearts are broken. That's what they say, but they continue to provide weapons to the state of Israel, and everything is very well planned and scripted commitment. That's what I quote the Secretary General of Amnesty International. And that's what she said, that it's very well planned and scripted commitment. That's basically what she's talking about when she's talking about the leaders, especially in Washington, D.C., that Blinken to Biden. So we got to hold these individuals, these elected officials accountable, because mass protests are going on in entire U.S. And UT Austin just a few days ago, the kind of heavy-handedness by the police, and they were called onto campus as if these protesters are committed any crime. They are not committing any crime, and they are being now linked to Hamas. People are calling them pro-Hamas. People even call them pro-Palestinian. And although majority of them are pro-peace, they are anti-war. They do not want to see any kind of aggression and catastrophe and human suffering, and how children, which according to the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and he was under testimony and he under oath said that 25,000, not 14,000, but 25,000 children are dead. And the numbers, according to one report, is over 40,000, 41,000. So we do not even know that how many people have lost their lives. And according to the International Court of Justice, and also they have concluded the risk of genocide is extremely high. And imminent legal attorneys and those who have legal authority, especially in international law, they have concluded that genocide is already occurring. And then we also some situations in other parts of the world. So people are dying and we are witnessing it. So is the UN Charter and international law and the legal framework, both of them have collapsed? I personally believe that yes, it has collapsed, because right now, all the legal avenues and based on international law, no one is going to rescue, and no one is basically taking any action on the ground in terms of stopping this genocide, which allegedly, as the international lawyers and those who are the experts in international law and the International Court of Justice have already concluded, that the and they were a little bit diplomatic, I would say, because they said that they have all the evidence that the risk of genocide is extremely high. So here we are in 2024 discussing this issue, and then these protesters who are protesting and using their First Amendment right, and they have been labeled by many traditional media, and we have to call those type of traditional media out, because they are not doing justice to journalism, and they are doing injustice to themselves and to those who are actually standing up for humanity and standing up for human rights and speaking loudly in terms of crimes against humanity. Let me also share something very important in terms of this entire aspect of the Palestine versus Israel, that who was where, and did Palestine exist before Israel? And you will find out more in terms. There are a lot of proofs, but here's one more that I would like to play right now. So watch this.
All right, check this out. My husband picked up this world map from the beginning of history. Chronological historical map to present day. So it goes on for like, I don't know how many feet, like 20 feet? 40. Maybe 40 feet. But watch this. It's amazing. Check this out. In 1450 BC, okay, guess what was established? What is that word right there? See it in the middle of the screen? That's Palestine. Okay, let me go back here. The descendants of Canaan, us Arabs call it Canaan. Follow that orange line to 1451 BC, and boom, there's Palestine. Keep going. Here comes Judah. Of course, they're all Jews living in Palestine. And then here we are, 1900 BC, Israel was established. So if anyone tells you that Israel was before Palestine, or that Palestine never existed, show them this video. There's Palestine. And then there's Israel. You just won the argument. And guess what? This was before Christ was born. Where was Christ born? He was born in Palestine. This is when Christ was born. And there's Muhammad. There's when Islam was established. There's the Quran. 1600 AD.
So welcome back, and for Instagram viewers, I will also put the video clip on Instagram page as well, but we are also live on YouTube Live and Facebook Live, and also X platform, formerly known as Twitter Live. So this video can clearly also show that Palestine existed way before, even before Jesus came to earth, and he was born. So prior to Jesus as well, and that timeline is there as well. So peace be upon him. And then we got to make sure that we continue to stay truthful to facts, and also continue to raise awareness. And also the University of California, which I reported last week, Asna Tabassum, she was barred from speaking. She is a valedictorian and she earned her right to speak, but they suppressed her free speech, and even and she was not allowed to speak at her graduation ceremony as a valedictorian. And then at Columbia University, where 108 students, they were arrested. This was the mass arrest since 1968 at Columbia University in New York, and that is also very shameful. And how the president it was reported that the president of Columbia University had to go back to the executive committee, and they have the faculty and students as part of that committee, and she had to get approval from the executive board to actually ask for outside police. But that did not happen as well, because unanimously they rejected that. But still, she unilaterally called outside police. So this is where all these various checks and balances that are put in place to make sure that we follow those, unfortunately they are not being followed. And the UN Charter, which I would like to also point out in terms of what is UN Charter, because a lot of people don't recognize and understand in terms of the UN Security Council. And before I go to the UN Security Council, I would like to share this with all of you, that here is the Secretary General of Amnesty International, and she basically said, and she issued a report as well, world seeing near breakdown of international law amid wars in Gaza and Ukraine, Amnesty says. And Dr. Agnes Callamard, she's the Secretary General of Amnesty International, and she was speaking on Tuesday, April 23rd, just a few days at a press conference in London. And you can go and look at the Associated Press news and just Google it. The Human Rights Organization said the most powerful governments, including the United States, Russia, and China, have led a global disregard for international rules and values enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, with civilians in conflicts paying the highest price. So it's incumbent, it's an obligation on each and every citizen and resident of United States, Russia, and China. If people are not going to stand up for humanity and to hold their own governments accountable, then I'm sorry to say, we are seeing complete collapse of the international framework. And that's what the Amnesty report is also talking about. And she also quoted, and she said, unprecedented, quote unquote, the level of violation of international order witnessed in the past year. And now with this so-called war, because of the war with Gaza, I mean, they don't have army, they don't have navy, they don't have air force, but they are calling it a war. It's one-sided. So October 7th is not the day when the history basically started, and we have to just ignore what happened in the past 75 years. That is completely ignorant and injustice, being a journalist, being an elected official, being a human, whoever basically does that. And even if some journalists or traditional media anchors and hosts, if they are spreading this misinformation, then I can only share that thanks to the social media platforms, and we are grateful that at least we have some type of humanity left, in a sense of at least that people are speaking up and sharing accurate and correct information, because a lot of lies and misinformation are being shared just to make sure that, oh, people are not going to just completely block everything and drop everything and focus on how hundreds and thousands of people are getting killed. And injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Quote in this Amnesty report, I quote what Amnesty International report is saying: Israel's flagrant disregard for international law is compounded by the failures of its allies to stop the indescribable civilian bloodshed meted out in Gaza. Unquote. She said many, quote, many of those allies were the very architects of that post-World War II system of law, unquote. And that is absolutely correct. The report highlighted the United States' failure to denounce rights violations committed by Israel and its use of veto power to paralyze the UN Security Council on a ceasefire resolution in Gaza, as well as Russia's ongoing aggression in Ukraine. It also pointed to China's arming of military forces in Myanmar and the way Beijing has shielded itself from scrutiny over its treatment of Uyghur minority. And I quote her, Secretary General of Amnesty International, quote, we have here three very large countries, superpowers in many ways, sitting on the Security Council that have emptied out the Security Council of its potentials and that have emptied out international law of its ability to protect people, unquote. She told the Associated Press in London. Now, this press conference and this report, unfortunately, is not getting the kind of attention that it should get, because you know why. The report, which detailed Amnesty's assessment of human rights in 155 countries, underlined an increasing backlash against women's rights and gender equality in 2023. And then it cited the brutal suppression of women's protests in Iran, the Taliban decrees, quote, aimed at erasing women from public life, unquote, in Afghanistan, and legal restrictions on abortion in the US and Poland, among others. The rights organizations also warned about the threat of new technologies if left unchecked, saying the rapid advancement in artificial intelligence, AI, and mass surveillance tools could be deployed to stoke conflict, encroach on rights and freedoms, and sow discord in a landmark election year. Because there are a lot of elections that are happening not only in the US but also in India. Unregulated tech advances, quote, can be weaponized to discriminate, disinform, and divide, unquote, Calamart said. So I really urge you to continue to raise awareness, continue to do different kinds of protests wherever you're engaged. Do it lawfully. That's your legal right. That's your civil right. And at UT Austin, what happened, unfortunately, it's unprecedented. The kind of heavy-handedness and the National Guard and the heavy armed police that were called at the UT campus, that's unheard of and unprecedented. And the audacity of those to call the protesters as violent protests, or if the language that they are using is somehow your feelings are hurt. Here the people are dead. They can never be brought back, and no matter what is done, there's no end in sight. But let's say if there is a complete ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, those 40,000 people, which have been reported now in other credible news organization, very few of them, but they are reporting, then those people cannot be brought back, and over 80,000 injured, their limbs, legs, hands, and whatever injuries that they have suffered, they cannot recover from it. And then the mental trauma. So unfortunately, little has been done, and now the time has passed. And how many more people would have to continue to die and suffer before we hold those who have been committing war crimes, and those where the International Court of Justice has also said that there's an extremely high risk of genocide, and they have the evidence. And then the eminent legal attorneys of international law, they have already said that genocide has already occurred and is already occurring. Then shame on all the elected officials of the world, whoever they are, and we know who they are. And Amnesty International's report that just published a couple of days ago is the manifestation of the gross violations of human rights and crimes against humanity and war crimes that are being committed right now as we speak. So my fellow Americans and those of you who are not in America and watching this live streaming all over the world, continue to press your legal attorneys that they need to do whatever it takes to file different types of petitions with the government, as well as protests, that you have the right to do it. And at the same time, hold your public officials, elected officials accountable. And this is where we've got to make sure that humanity is dying as we speak right now. And if all of us, whatever role and capacity that we are in, and we're not going to play that role, that I can only say that we are doing injustice to ourselves, and not only to ourselves, but also to our future generations and to our children and grandchildren. So with that, I will basically end today's live streaming broadcast and today's show. So thank you so much for watching Zishan On Air Unedited, and continue to do whatever it takes to bring calmness and sanity, and hope calmer minds prevail. Unfortunately, we are witnessing the terrible and most horrible kind of atrocities, as we are witnessing and seeing this in Gaza, and then in Gaza, and then obviously the Rafah border, where millions of people are crammed into a very small area, and then on top of that, famine that is happening right now, and the lack of humanitarian aid that is still not passing through because of the law that has also been broken here. Because whenever U.S. provides weapons, that there is also a law and a stipulation within the law that humanitarian aid must not be hindered, and humanitarian aid has been hindered, as reported by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, UNRWA, and many other credible organizations. So, with that, signing off, and we'll continue to raise awareness and continue to make sure that we hold our elected officials, and those of you who have voted, continue to make sure and check their record, that how they have voted, because I'm only finding 9 Democrats at the House of Representatives in U.S. Congress, when the last week of October, the first bill was passed, and that bill basically was talking about the Israel's right to self-defense, and those 9 Democrats, and there was only one Republican that voted no, and those are the folks. We salute them, we respect them, because they voted no, and out of those 9, the 4 of them very prominent, Congressman Al Green, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman Alexandria Cortez, AOC. So we got to make sure that these are the only elected officials at the state level, and at the from the state of Texas at the state level. I couldn't find anyone. And then I've already reported about the 2 individuals, especially from our community. And then I've also mentioned that these 9 Democrats, House of Representatives, they were standing on the right side of humanity. They are on the right side of humanity. They are on the right side of history. And then once they voted no, then it grew to over 100 congressmen and congresswomen together in the House of Representatives, that consist of 435. 435. So unfortunately, there are very few in numbers, but always remember that when there is darkness, you only need one candle or one ray of light to brighten up the room. If you're in darkness, you only need one candle and one flashlight, or one, I would say, light to brighten up the room, and you will see some a brightness, or at least the room will not be complete dark. So that is where we are. And also hats off to all these protesters, especially our Gen Z and our youngsters, because our best days are ahead of us, because they will be our future leaders. And unfortunately, the existing elected officials, they have dropped the ball, and they are not leveling and level setting with the people, and not speaking truthfully. And there are very few of them. And those who are not speaking truthfully and not telling us the truth, it's your job, it's my job, it's all of our job to hold them accountable and continue to press them and ask them. And they need to be put under political pressure, so they do the right thing, and they stop the human suffering, and they stop people from dying. And they can do that by cutting off military aid, and by implementing legal binding ceasefire, because there has been no legal binding permanent ceasefire that has been implemented yet, and there's no end in sight. But I'm hopeful that with everyone's pressure, and with all these university students from East Coast to West Coast, they are definitely raising the bar, and that's the reason for protests. So they are noticed, and protests are disruptive. That's why there are these. There will always be these protests. And if anyone thinks that, oh, you're just going to stand there and not even going to say anything, what kind of protest that would be? So the other thing that very quickly before I end this today's session is another important news with regards to the UN's Security Council. Before I share this one, the other important information with regards to the UN Security Council. Let me share that. So there's also some information that you can go, what role does it play in authorizing military force? So under the UN Charter, members can only use force in self-defense or when they have obtained authorization from the Security Council. However, members and coalitions of countries have often used military force outside of these contexts. So this is from Council on Foreign Relations, and that did not happen. So Israel, state of Israel, did not go to UN Security Council and got the right of self-defense. And if they did, I do not see any resolution, because then that resolution would have been vetoed by Russia and China. So this is another important way of looking at the UN Security Council and how the entire international law and framework has been completely ignored. That was the report from the Amnesty International as well. And one more before I end today's session is this report right here in terms of the United Nations. The bloody cycle of retaliation must end. Secretary General tells Security Council, urging stop to hostilities in Gaza. So in Gaza, urging maximum restraint following recent escalation in the Middle East, the head of the United Nations urged an end to the deadly cycle of retaliation and called on the international community to work together to avert a full-scale regional conflict, first by ending hostilities in Gaza and ultimately by realizing the two-state solution, as the Security Council today convened its quarterly open debate on the situation in the region. And this is again on the Security Council. This happened just about a week ago, and these are the meeting coverage and press releases. So we've got to make sure that we are holding our elected officials from all these countries, Russia, China, and US, because if these countries are not adhering to international law, then this is very troubling, as reported by the Amnesty International report as well, by the Secretary General of Amnesty International. So with that, I've shared enough information with evidence and with all the key information that should be at our fingertips, and continue to raise awareness, continue to play your role positively and constructively, and hold those who are in the position of power, because we gave them the power. So they do not need to lecture us. They should not lecture us. They need to action because of our mandate that we have given them. That's the reason we elected them. And that's the whole point. And if they are lecturing us and giving us excuses and not doing their job, this is a complete failure on the part of those who were elected by us. And there are very few of them who are actually doing their job. And those who are doing their job, I've mentioned about them as well, and we respect them. So with that, thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll connect next week again with the development, and continue to follow Zishan On Air Unedited on YouTube, and subscribe us on YouTube if you have not, and Facebook. We are on Facebook as well, and on Instagram, as well as on Twitter, X platform. So thank you so much. Have a great evening.